Hey YouTube, welcome back to Syseng Quick. In our last video, we created Ansible plays to deploy niri on a minimal Fedora installation. But a bare-bones system isn't that much use. Manually installing all of our applications would take a long time, so let's do it in a smarter and more reproducible way. Today, we'll be extending our Ansible plays to automate the installation of everything we need to build a complete working system. Let's get started. Real quick, let me apprise you of a few changes I made between episodes. First, I went ahead and added the Community General collection. I didn't want to do that originally because I felt it was too heavy for just one task, but we will need it for tasks in this episode, so I went ahead and did that and added it to the Docker file so it will be part of the dev container. I went ahead and refactored the copper role to use that, or the tasks I mean. And I went ahead and stopped gathering facts entirely in the playbook because we only needed that for the version in the copper. I went ahead and refactored the user tasks as well. I have placed them into their own role because we'll be needing that in both the niri role and the new role we're going to make here. And I made the user role a dependency of the niri role, so we'll have that available still. Okay, let's move on to new things. There are a lot of ways to install packages on Fedora. We can install them from the Fedora repos using DNF. There might be third-party repos we want to install from. We might need to install raw RPM files we get from somewhere. We might want to install Flatpaks from FlatHub. Or there may be applications that don't fit any of these cases. Let's start by adding a role to install our applications, and we'll start with RPM packages since that should be the easiest. So let's say I want to make a new role called apps, and I'll say my tag is apps. We'll go into roles. I'll make a new role called apps. We'll have task and main.yaml. And I would like to start by adding all the packages we're going to need from the Fedora repos. So let's go ahead and add a vars file as well, so vars main.yaml, and let's see what packages we need to install. So I'm going to make a variable here called app packages. This will be a list of all the packages we want to install. So I like using Brave browser at work, so I'm going to do that. I like btop as an alternative to top. Sometimes I need a different browser to run tests on things. I use Evolution as my email client because it has the best support for Outlook 365. I use FreeRDP to connect to remote sessions. FuseLibs is going to be required for app images, so I always go ahead and install that. Git is pretty obvious. Kitty is my favorite terminal emulator, so I like to use that. I use Podman, so let's install Podman Compose and Podman Docker. And then I want to use Vim as my default editor in place of Nano. Okay, so these are the default packages I want to install. However, we may want to give the user a way to opt out of some of these packages. So let's go ahead and do that as well. Let's make another file in our defaults so the user can override this variable. And I will give it a way to skip over variables. So let's say apps skip, and we'll give it an empty array for by default. So basically, we don't want to skip things unless the user asks us to. So by default, we're going to have an empty array. Now, if the user does supply app skip, we need to make sure that they supply the right kind of parameter. So let's go ahead and make an argument spec to validate our role variables. Let's go ahead and make meta main.yaml. And let's go over and make our argument specs. So we'll have argument specs. And I also need dependencies because we're going to need that role that we had before in niri. So our dependencies are role, Syseng Quick, Fedora, user. And then for our argument specs, for the main, I'm going to have some options. And we've got apps skip. And in apps skip, it's going to be a type of list. The elements are going to be strings. It is not required because we have a default value. The default value is the empty array, and the description is going to be list of packages, list of apps to skip installing. Okay, there we go. There's our argument spec, so that should go for this. So we now have our vars and our defaults. So let's see how we can install packages. However, there's one issue. Brave Browser is not in the Fedora repos. It is a third-party repo. So let's go ahead and make a way to install third-party repos. So let's say apps, packages, repos, and for Brave Browser, the repo is going to be Brave Browser-rpm release s3 brave.com brave browser.repo. Okay, so there are the repos we can use to install our packages. So let's go back to our tasks file. And in our main task file, we are going to import our packages tasks. So let's import packages tasks. We are going to import tasks. It's going to be packages.yaml. We're going to need to become root for this, so I'll go ahead and do that here. And I'll say the tag is going to be apps packages. Okay, and then let's make a packages.yaml file. So packages.yaml. And let's go see what we'll need to do for that. So first of all, we're going to have some packages that are installed with DNF and some packages that are just raw RPMs. So let's go ahead and make a tag block for DNF. So we'll add some more tags here, apps packages DNF, and we'll make this a block. And then we'll need to install third-party repos. So to do that, we're going to use the getURL module. And the URL is going to be item.value. That's what we had in our vars. Item is going to be this item, and the value is going to be our URL. And then the destination is going to be etsy yum repos.d item.key.repo. So item.key is going to be Brave Browser. In this case, we're going to have brave-browser.repo in our etsy yum repos.d. Okay, that looks good. Let's set the mode as 0644. And we need to set a loop property on here. So we'll set apps, packages, repos. And I want to do dict to items. There we go. There's everything we're going to loop over. And we'll have our item value and our item key. Okay, so now that is our third-party repo. So let's go ahead and install our packages. So let's install packages, and we'll use the DNF module for this. And we're going to say, I want to install all the apps packages except the ones that are in apps skip. So if we are skipping a package, we won't install that. I should probably refactor the third-party repos to not install the repo for package we're skipping, but I'll look at that later. Okay, so the state. Now, we might want to allow people to force updates of packages that are already installed. So let's say that it's going to be latest if we are wanting to upgrade our apps. Otherwise, we'll just say the state is going to be present. And then we have the update only flag, which should follow apps upgrade. So we're going to update if we're doing apps upgrade. Otherwise, we're going to just install things. And we need to make sure we allow erasing for things like Vim default editor. Okay, so let's go ahead and add this apps upgrade thing. This is going to be a flag, so we'll put this in the default. So over here we have apps upgrade. The default is going to be false. We will only install packages by default. And then we'll go ahead and add this to our meta as well. So let's say apps upgrade. The type is a Boolean. Required is going to be false. The default is false. And the description is flag to force upgrade of apps. Okay, so we have that now. So that should be good. And I think that's everything we need for our DNF packages. So the next thing we might want to do is install packages from raw RPM files. Some packages have RPMs but don't have repos. Zoom is an example of this. So let's go see what else we need to do to get that. So let's make a new variable in here, apps RPMs. So I'm going to install 1Password, which can be found at download.onepassword.com, Linux RPM stable x8664 1Password latest.rpm. Now, yes, this won't work on AM or ARM machines, but we'll deal with that in the future. I'm going to go ahead and install VS Code. And yes, both 1Password and VS Code do have repos, so we could install them that way, but I'm going to go ahead and install them with the RPMs because that's what I would normally do for my first install. But these RPMs will install the repos. And then Zoom, which does not have a repo, you just have to go get the new RPM every once in a while. It can be found at Zoom US client latest Zoom x8664. There is no ARM package for Zoom. Okay, I think that's everything we need for our app RPMs, so let's go look at our packages file, and let's make a new block in here. Okay, so this is a tags block for RPM. So we'll give it tags, and this is apps packages RPM. And we'll give a block here. And we need to download the RPM and then install it. So we're going to do a few things to get stuff working. First, we're going to need a temp directory. So let's make one of those. Create temp dir for RPM packages. We'll use the temp file module. The state is a directory. And register this to apps temp dir. Now we need to check if our package is already installed, because if it is, we don't want to install it unless the user told us to upgrade packages. So we can gather facts about installed packages using the package facts module. Okay. And now we can install the RPM packages. We're going to need to do include tasks for this, and the task is going to be includes rpm package.yaml, and we're going to loop over every key that's in our apps RPM. So we're going to say apps RPMs dot key. It's going to be a list of our keys. And this will allow us to filter by any apps we want to skip installation of. Okay, now to make sure that we always remove our temp file at the end, remove temp dir for RPM downloads. We need to use the file module. The state should be absent, and the path is going to be appstempdir.path. Okay, that looks pretty good. I think we're ready to go ahead and add this RPM package. So let's go ahead in tasks and let's make a new folder called includes. And then inside this, we'll make our RPM package.yaml. Okay, so let's set up some variables for this. So we have a variable for the RPM file, which we're going to use in more than one place. So I'm going to go ahead and say appstempdir.path, and it's going to be the item, which is our key, and then it's going to be RPM. And we only want to install this when item is not in ansible facts.packages, or if we are forcing it with apps upgrade. So those are the two times we would actually install this package. Now we can go ahead and get our block over here. And the first thing we need to do is download the RPM file. So I'm going to do get URL to get this. So I want to go apps RPMs for my item. That's our URL. The destination is going to be the RPM file, and the mode is going to be 0644. Okay, and then we can install the RPM. Now, there seems to be some bug in Ansible where I can't use the DNF module to install an RPM file. You're supposed to be able to, but I've been getting an error, so I'm going to do it with the command module, and I'm going to talk to people in the Ansible community and find out if this is a bug or if I'm doing something wrong. But I haven't been able to figure out anything I'm doing wrong. I haven't been able to solve it, so I'm working around it with this. So the command is going to be dnf install -y RPM file. Okay, that looks pretty good. Let's go ahead and quote that. And then I'm going to say changed when is true, because if it runs this, it changed it probably. I will go ahead and comment out the proper way to do it, even though it's not working for me. So it should be RPM file and state present. But again, this is not working for me, so I'm going to go ahead and leave that commented out. But I'll have it for whenever I figure out what I'm doing wrong, or if there's a bug fix that gets released later. Okay, I think that's everything we need for the RPM packages. Let's do our Flatpaks next. So let's say apps Flatpaks, and I'm going to install OBS Studio. That's OBS Project Studio. I think the capitalization is important there, so I'm going to make sure that's right. And now let's go ahead and add a Flatpak task. So let's go back to our main task, and let's import Flatpak tasks. It should be Flatpaks. Let's see here. I don't want to become true for everything. Most of this is going to be done as the regular user. So we're just going to go ahead and say Flatpaks for that. Okay, there we go. So let's go ahead and make our task file for our Flatpaks. And over in Flatpaks, the first thing we're going to have to do is install Flatpak, because we may not have that on our system. For our minimal install, I know that we don't. So let's install Flatpak with the package module. The name is Flatpak. The state should be present. And we need to make sure we become root for this. That's the only task we need to be root for in this. Okay, if we want to install Flatpaks from FlatHub, we need to make sure we have that. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's install the FlatHub remote. So we're going to use community general.flatpak remote. The name is going to be FlatHub. The state should be present. Flatpak repo URL. Let's go ahead and copy it so I don't typo it. Download flathub.org repo flathub.flatpak repo. And the method is going to be user. We're going to install this for our user, not system-wide. And then we will install the Flatpak apps. And let's see here. Let's do community general Flatpak. The name is going to be our item. The state should be present. And the method should be user. And then we will loop over our apps Flatpaks, and we will remove anything that's in apps skip. Okay, that should install all of our Flatpaks. With the exception of the Snap Store, which I don't use, that covers the most common ways of installing applications on Fedora. However, there is a lot more things that are possible, so we're going to have to handle some of these Snowflake apps. So let's go ahead and add an apps special. I'm going to install Joplin, which is a note-taking app, and I'll install UV, which is my favorite Python package manager. So let's go ahead and go back to main, and let's copy this. And let's move that to our apps special task. So there we go for that. And now we'll go ahead and add our special.yaml. And in here, we're going to include any tasks that are in that particular thing over there, that app special repo, or the variable. So let's include our special tasks. and we're going to do an include tasks, and we're going to include them from includes special item.yml. And then I want to loop over apps special, and we will filter that by anything we are apps skipping. And that should be good for that. Okay, so now we just need to make our special applications. So let's go over into our includes. Let's make a new folder, special. And then we'll go ahead and add our first special application, which is Joplin. And we're going to need to install Joplin. So let's go ahead and make a tag block here. The tags are going to be app special. Let's go ahead and put the block in there. And the first thing I want to do is see if Joplin is already installed. So we can do that by checking for the file. We'll use the stat module to do that. The path is going to be userinfo.home, and we're going to be in the .joplin folder, and then it is joplin.appimage. That's the actual executable. Get checksum, we don't need to do that. Get attributes, we don't need to do that either, so we'll set both those to be false. And we will register apps stat. Okay, that looks pretty good over there. And now we can block, we can add another block. This is the when block. And we're going to say when not apps stat.exists, or we want to do apps upgrade. Okay, I think that looks pretty good over here. Let's add a vars clause here. Let's say the installer, and the installer is going to be in a temp directory. So let's say apps tempter.path, and then we're going to do install.sh. That'll be where our installer is. We haven't created this temp directory yet, but we will. Let's go ahead and make our block, and this will be the first thing we do, creating the temp directory. And we're going to do it the same way we did back for the RPM packages. So back over here, we did the create tempter for RPM packages, and we're going to do the exact same thing over here. Let's go ahead and do that. So we have apps tempter. This time is a tempter for Joplin. And we need to go ahead and clean that up as well. So we'll add this always clause right down here. There we go. There's our always clause. Oh, went back too far there. Remove tempter for Joplin. Okay. That should be good for that. There's our temp directory. So the next thing we need to do is actually fetch the installer script. Joplin is distributed as an app image, but it has a bash installer script, at least for the official installer. There is a Flatpak repo, but it is a Flatpak on FlatHub, but it is not official. I don't use it except on my M1 Mac because the FlatHub does distribute ARM binaries. The official installer does not have any. A bit unfortunate, but it is what it is. Okay, so let's fetch the installer script for Joplin. We can use getURL for this, and the URL is going to be a big long URL. I'm going to just copy this. So it is raw githubusercontent.com Laurent22 Joplin dev Joplin install and update.sh. Okay, that was a lot. Go ahead and move that a little bit down. Okay, so the destination is going to end up being installer. I think, is that right? Yeah, that looks right to me. Okay, and then the mode for this will be 0755, and there is our installer. So now all we have to do is run the install script. Run install script for Joplin. We're going to use the command module for this. The command is going to be bash installer. And it's going to definitely change things if we're running this. So that should be good. And I think that's everything for Joplin. So yeah, could move on to our next application, which is UV. So let's go ahead and add our UV task file. And we're going to make another tag block. Just like for Joplin, we need the apps special tag in here. And we could add other things as well, like apps special UV. So I would probably go ahead and do that as well. So let's say apps special Joplin for that task. And let's go ahead and add our block. And the first thing I want to do is check if UV is installed. So we'll use the stat module again. The path is going to be user local bin UV. We will get the checksum. No, we won't. We will get the attributes. No, we won't. And then I will register apps stat. And then we will add our when block. Okay, so when this file doesn't exist, so apps stat.stat.exists or apps upgrade. Okay, and then we'll have our block right over here. So the first thing I want to do is, again, I want to create a temp directory, and then we're going to need to remove that at the end. This temp directory is for UV, and we will clean that up at the end in our always block. So let's go ahead and add that as well, and we'll turn this to be UV. Okay, that looks pretty good. So next I need to get the UV package information. We're going to download the UV package from GitHub. We need to find out what its current version is. So we can say get UV package info from GitHub API. We're going to use the URI module to do that. And the URL for this is going to be https api.github.com repos astral-sh UV releases latest. And then I need to return content true, I think. And then we will register apps UV info. Okay, so once we have that, we can download the tarball. So let's go ahead and do that. Download UV. Let's download UV. And this time I'm going to do get URL. The URL is a big, giant, long path again. So we're going to get this from GitHub. So we've got github.com. We've got astral-sh UV releases download. I need my UV version. And I need to download this long tar GZ. So we get UV version from here. So let's go ahead and set a variable for that. So right over here, we'll say vars UV version should be apps UV info.json.tag name. That's going to be our UV version. Okay, and let's see here. We need to know where the tarball is as well, where we're going to put this. And I'm going to keep this handy because we'll be using that a bit later as well. So let's add a vars section up here too. So let's make UV tarball, and the path to that is going to be appstempter.path. And then I'm going to say uv.tar.gz. This will be the path to our tarball file. So that'll be our destination, which is UV tarball. And then the mode for this is going to be 0644. Okay, now that we hopefully have our UV tarball, we should be able to extract this and keep going. So let's extract UV tarball. And we use the unarchive module for this. The source is going to be UV tarball. The destination is going to be apps apps tempter, sorry, dot path. And then it's going to be, I think that's just it, isn't it? Yeah, that should be it. Okay, and I need to say remote source is true because this is on the remote side, not the local side. And then finally, we will copy UV binary to user local bin so it is available for us. So we'll use the copy module. The source is going to be apps tempter.path. Then it's going to be UV x8664 unknown Linux GNU UV. Now, this actually won't work on some platform, but it should work on Fedora. I know this binary would not work on things like Alpine, but we're not using Alpine, so it should be fine for this. Okay, the destination is going to be user local bin. The remote source is going to be true. The mode should be 0755. It's executable. And we need to become true for this because we're copying it to a secured path that we can't copy with our regular user. And I think that's everything for UV. Okay, let's see how many mistakes I made. Let's do ansible playbook sysengquick.fedora.niri. I'm going to put the tags as apps. We've already done the niri task. We can go ahead and skip over those and just do the apps tags. Okay. It's making the repos for Brave browser, and now it is installing packages. This part might take a minute. Okay, it's downloading the RPM files now, and it's installing them. Okay, it's installing the Flatpak package now, so we can do FlatHub management. It will probably take a minute to install OBS, but it appears to not be failing, so I assume it's doing what it's supposed to be. Yeah, it appears to have installed OBS. It's downloaded Joplin. It appears to have installed that. Okay, well, nothing failed, so that's a good first step. Let's see what actually worked. Okay, let's log in as the Proxmox user. It's a secret to everybody. Okay. It looks mostly okay, but hard to tell yet. Let's open up the app launcher. We've got Brave. We've got Joplin. I see there's btop++ in there. OBS is in there. Yeah, this pretty much looks like it worked. We've got UV, so that looks pretty good. Yeah, I would say this did work properly. Okay, well, that's good news. Hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, please hit those like and subscribe buttons. Come back and see us next time. I've got a few more ideas for extending this process a little bit further. I'd like to control all of the dot files, so configurations for bash and git and vim and whatever else you might want to do in there. So I think that would be the next step, or maybe the last step, in fully configuring a desktop. Thanks for watching. See you next time.